Hello again, and welcome to Watercolor with me, an autumnal cornucopia. The first thing that I do is paint the cornucopia itself. By painting the cornucopia, I find that it lays a good base, and you can immediately sort of see the different elements that are really the things that need to kind of pop. And the color of the cornucopia is this cohesive element that runs through the piece. And then I move to the sunflowers. And as per usual, the general idea with my personal style of watercoloring is I really only usually do 2 layers max, but I try to get as much vibrancy and as much definition in the first layer as possible. Of course, I'm using my favorite paper, the Arches cold pressed watercolor paper. This paper, with the hand of it, can hold on to a lot of vibrancy, where I find that some hot press papers actually can't. So that's something that I have found that really works for me in this paper. Another thing that I tend to do while I'm watercoloring is I really play around with the color and the paint while it's wet, because that is what watercolor enables you to do. That is where you get this looseness and malleability of watercolor. Where you do not achieve any of that is after it is dried. You can do absolutely nothing after it's dried, unlike other paints, which you can cover up. But when it is wet, you can take some of the pigment away, and so you'll see me doing that a lot. You'll see me kind of brushing off some of the pigment and adding these little dark bits and little vibrant bits, and sometimes I'll add a little like splash of water for that kind of ombre, or there's another word, and I haven't voiced over a video in so long that I forgot what it is, but I achieve a lot of the effects in the piece just in that very first layer. And sometimes paints don't play well together, and sometimes you don't know that, especially if you aren't doing swatches and stuff, which I rarely do. I'm such an impulsive person. That was the case when it came to this kind of yellow-orange type color and this deep squash green. They just did not want to mix together, and that's okay. Is it the most graceful gradient in the world? No. But in the end, did it work for the piece, and did it give it kind of a personality, and did it seem like it was intentional? Yes. And this is where just the trust in the watercolor and in your stroke and what happens on the page comes in. Sometimes, usually we have ideas about how we want things to work, but I find that the joy of painting with watercolor is often really being able to let go of some of these ideas. My two favorite things to paint on this illustration are the corn and the grapes. I really didn't know how I was going to paint the corn, and I just totally winged it, and I think it came out great. These little dried, like, husks of corn are basically like my favorite things ever. I remember we always had these like 3 husks, and they were our Thanksgiving decorations. And I was obsessed with them. And I think it's because they all had different colors of kernels, and anything with like a varied color palette just obsessed me as a kid. I would like stare at these corn husks. So there's a homage to the nostalgic corn husks. As a perfectionist who is trying to recover, this is not easy for me at all. Sometimes, I'll get far into a piece and a little mistake will happen, like the thing that happened on the squash, which is like, if I didn't point it out, probably no one would even notice it. And so it's no big deal. But, stuff like that would completely throw me and make me want to start over again. But that does not bring any joy. And I really believe that art should be joyful, and that is why I took a little hiatus, actually, because I haven't posted in a very long time on anything, and I'm just getting back, and it was because my job started to feel like a job. And painting in this way brings me a lot of joy. I absolutely love to see colors come to life on the page. It's actually quite therapeutic. To be honest, I have not done a piece like this, a watercolor piece like this, in a really long time, because I have been doing more of the modern art stuff. But editing this together and then watching it back, I actually have a huge craving to do another one of these pieces, so this might be what I do on the Thanksgiving holiday. And I did decide to add a little bit of deep blue for the background of the Cornucopia. And I decided to do this because everything was very brown, and I wanted things to pop. a little bit more. Adding like a little bit of a cool element aside from the cool green, I thought would tell your eye where to go a little bit more on the page. This was an illustration that I created for a client to go on a teeny weeny gift card last year. So I could not share it last Thanksgiving because often with client work you can't share until it's live. And so I thought I would share it this Thanksgiving. So that is the final piece, and I hope you enjoyed watercoloring with me again, and that you are having a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season. So until we meet again, TTFN.